Hey everybody, welcome to Leading Thriving Cities. My name is Chad Wright. I'm the founder of Forward Partners. This is our show where we shine a spotlight on leadership in public service, and we have deep conversations about sustainability and how we build a thriving future for our cities. Today's guest is Wayne Nero. He's the Assistant City Manager of Georgetown, Texas, and Wayne is one of those folks who has really made that transition from police chief and a long career in policing into city management. And so we talked through what that transition is like. What are some of the key things that he has learned in that? And it's becoming a much more common transition to make. And there's a lot that happens in policing that applies so well to city management. I can't wait for you to see this conversation. Thank you for joining us on Leading Thriving Cities. All right, Wayne, thank you for joining us on Leading Thriving Cities. Now, I'm excited about this. You are one of our very few guests who has made the transition from police chief to city management. And I think you and I were talking before, there's a lot of police chiefs that look at that as that's the next logical step. So this is going to be a fun conversation. So thanks for doing this, man.
I appreciate the invite. Honored to do it.
Well, help us understand this. So you have been in both the police chief role and now the assistant city manager role and you're in Georgetown, Texas, which is the fastest growing city in America.
We're trying to give that title up. Yeah. So
everybody wants a title to get it. And they're like,
right.
This actually sucks a little bit.
It's a lot of extra work.
It is. It's a ton. So help us understand the perspective. Like what do you wish people understood about either being a police chief or being in city management?
Well, I'll start with my current role as an ACM. Mm-hmm. Because I'm still struggling with how I answer that question.
Yes.
You spend 3 decades in a profession where you are the subject matter expert, mm-hmm. and now you go into a role where you are not the subject matter expert.
Yeah.
In fact, you know very little.
Yeah.
Like the 3 decades, I equate it to this. You go from being a coach, mm-hmm. and my sport was law enforcement.
Yep.
And I worked hard to be a good coach. Maybe not a great coach, but I made some changes in Georgetown, and I was dedicated to coaching the sport of law enforcement. Mm-hmm. There's not much after nearly 3 decades that I didn't know the answer to, or had 5 people on speed dial that I know had been through that, and I can call and get an answer and work a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you go from that, where you get comfortable, to being an athletic director, where now you're not even a coach, right?
Yeah.
You are coaching 6 different coaches in 6 different sports. And unfortunately for one of my coaches, I know your sport very well, so you have to behave. And you can't, my IT director could walk in and tell me anything.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, okay, we need to do that.
Yeah.
Or so we don't both get fired, right? And he'd be like, yes. I'd be like, okay, I will support that. I have no idea what you just said.
How comfortable have you become with saying, I don't know, and with making decisions on, hey, we think we have the base information we need, but I'm not an expert in this. How comfortable are you with that?
Instantly.
Okay.
20 years ago, not at all.
Would have struggled with that?
I would have struggled with that 100%. That's just part of growth. I mean, even as a chief, you have to figure that out quickly. And my early years, pride had an issue with pride and doing quality work. And I'm sure we'll get into that, results over people.
Yeah.
But not in a toxic way.
Yeah.
I think one thing I've always tried to be is very authentic. Mm-hmm. And when you can be authentic, even when you're opinionated or you're angry, you're one of those folks.
I can't imagine you being opinionated or angry.
You're one of those people that you just know where you stand with him. You know what I mean? But he'll hug you and love you as soon as it's over.
Yeah.
That's the kind of leadership I was brought up under. But that can freak people out, right? That's part of the growth of being an ACM is you get to get off the dance floor and onto the balcony. And I will tell you, in the 3.5 years I've been at City Hall, I have grown exponentially more as a leader and had so much better quality time for reflection than I've ever had in my career. Because now you get to see 6 directors go through directorship. And it's all the same, man. It is all the same.
Yes. Same
People
problems
are the
department.
same.
Yep.
All we're talking about is the technical nature of the language you're using in the conversation relative to the problem.
So let me ask you this. One of the things you were talking about there was the ability to have that reflection has really helped your growth. Was there time for that and space for that on the police side of things? We just didn't necessarily take it. Or is it the perspective
yes and
that's
no.
been helpful?
Right. I mean, like we have a lot more opportunities for like leadership development in law enforcement, I think. Like looking at all my 6 departments that report to me, like public safety, even on the fire side, you have a lot of opportunity for leadership development, like at a number of levels, like National Academy. I've been to the FBI, NA. Like there's a lot of, like that's a sabbatical. I mean, that's 10 weeks long.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of opportunity to do that. And I've grown exponentially through all of those. My sergeant years, like coming out of the Marine Corps years, were a little rough because that's a hard transition from, military life to like civilian law enforcement. It is very different. But you have to take the time if you want to be a better leader. And sometimes it's hard to take that time. Like when I was a chief, like, yes, you had courses like that, but I did not have the time like I have now. And it's not that I'm not busy. So if my boss is listening to this, I'm super busy.
David's
it's
like, give
time
him
I
more
get home
to do.
When I'm not stressed.
You've got 6 departments reporting to you. You got plenty to do.
You know what I mean? It's because you're out of that role. I'd equate when I left law enforcement, it was like crossing the finish line of running a marathon. Right? I didn't know how much longer I was going, but I was tired. I was broken. Like it'll make me emotional because I'm like, it was hard. I've seen a lot of horrible things.
Yeah.
Like it's been a career. You know what I mean? And you finish that. And it's like when you cross the finish line, it's so humbling because it all just comes crashing down. Like all of it. Everything you stuck in a box.
Yes.
Everything you never dealt with. And you don't understand it. You know what I mean? It just happens. And I've had several other chiefs I've talked to have expressed the exact same feeling. Yes. And that's how we equate it to. Yeah. So when you start working through that, and why did all this happen? Like, why? Because I never dealt with any of this. You know what I mean? And you start thinking back of, especially for me, because like coming out of the Marine Corps and going into law enforcement, when I was a kid, from the earliest age, I was going to be a cop and I was going to be a Marine. Yeah. Like I never, ever wondered what I was going to do. Public service, those 2 things are what I was going to do.
Does your family have a history of military service or law enforcement?
No, I had one grandfather that was in the Army.
This is just the track that you decided. Okay.
Ever since I could think, those are the 2 things I was going to do. And in my junior year, I enlisted, and my parents actually had to sign the paper for me to do that. Or I'm like, you can either do that and let me get in the delayed entry program, which will benefit me for a year, going to meetings and learning what I need to learn, or I'm going to do it anyway the day I graduate. Yeah. And they signed, and that was that. So I knew I was going to do that.
Again, I can't imagine you being opinionated and angry ever.
Not even at a young age. But God paid that forward because I have a middle child.
There you go. That's how it always gets you.
But the time to reflect, like stepping away from what I was incredibly passionate about. Like sometimes I can't even believe I made the transition, but I really enjoy working for my boss. Yeah. David Morgan. Like love him to death. We don't always agree on things. He's one of the best leaders I've ever worked with.
Again, you're opinionated.
Yeah. And I've learned more from just watching him.
Yes.
And he doesn't always get it right, but he's humble, and to watch him work on himself as a leader is inspiring to a number of us, like a number of all the other directors. And that helped me with that transition. I'm glad I did it now and not when I'm at the end of my career and had no purpose moving on.
Well, and that's the thing is, interestingly, the transition, whether it's from police chief to ACM or from a career in law enforcement to retirement, that transition is hard for all of y'all for that exact same reason of, turns out you can't just stuff things down and they magically disappear. You stuff them down, they're eventually going to come out. And when it's quiet is when they're going to come out. And I think this is where that transition, suddenly things are quiet.
And it was a dump truck. Yeah. And you're doing that in the middle of transitioning to a new job that absolutely nothing about.
That is also, by the way, super high stress. I think that's, so in a lot of the work we're trying to do with law enforcement is saying, okay, how can we not go on that journey in that way? To say, hey, what if we had little outlets for this along the way? Yeah. Where it's not this buildup that suddenly we got to do something with this at the end of 30 years. Because you're on that journey. That's a lot to deal with. And it's something that probably takes years, if not decades, to actually unwind. Yeah. But
we've been bad. We've not been very good at that. Yeah. And like when I was hired, if you went to an accident scene and you saw something horrible and that tore you up and you teared up or cried or were emotional, like you would not be working.
Yeah.
Like they'd be like, this job probably is not for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to really think about being here.
Yeah.
Like that was the mentality for years.
I mean, the answer to the
question. It's only the last decade where we've softened that stance and are doing more in the mental health space to take care of our people.
Yeah. The answer to the question, you good? The expected answer is, yeah, I'm good.
Yes, which is what we'd say.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I've seen it over and over again. And I think that's the problem. And what's funny is I had a woman at the gym yesterday was asking me what I do for a living. I said, well, I'm a leadership coach. And she said, what does that mean? Then I said, well, honestly, I teach people how to lead human beings because we don't really do that well. And she's like, why is that not required everywhere? And I said, well, honestly, because it's expensive and takes time and we don't want to invest that. But I said, realistically, the reason I think it is because great leadership requires vulnerability. It requires patience. It requires all these things that we were taught were weakness. And so we're not going to develop systems to teach people how to be weak because we don't want to be that. But the reality is those are just how you lead human beings really well. And so having people in policing that will have the vulnerability to say, yeah, that sucked and I don't know what to do with that, but I'm going to go get help right now.
Yeah. It's okay not to.
Yes. That's the thing. And I think that conversation is starting. And I think I look at things on long timelines. So I'm like, yeah, over the next 30 years, it's going to transform completely.
Yeah.
So we're early days in that, but that's what
the needle's moving.
Yeah.
The needle's moving.
It is. I actually had some hope the other day. I had a police chief the other day. He said, because I was talking to him about some stats, and he said, I agree with those, but my hope is those stats have not caught up to the changes we've made over the last 5 to 10 years. Hopefully the stats aren't quite as bad today as they were when this study was done. It's like, I hope you're right, because we need that. And I think that transition, if you had to talk to somebody that's about to make that transition, whether it's into a new role or into retirement, but coming out of a long career, what would you tell them to help them navigate that better?
Man, if you're coming out of the law enforcement realm, it'd be a long conversation.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was so deeply rooted in my persona.
Yes.
Like it's all I've known since I was like 18, right out of high school.
Did it become who you were?
I haven't been home. I left and did the Marine Corps thing for 4 years and went straight into law enforcement.
Yeah.
And it's the only two cultures I've known, you know what I mean? So to disconnect from that is difficult. And like we eat our own in that aspect. Like when you leave and the door shuts and it goes click,
see ya.
Like you're dead to everybody.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how long you were there. Like unbeknownst to us, life goes on. I know that's really hard to believe for some, but life goes on instantly. And you, like I said, it's like you cross the finish line of a marathon and you're like exhausted and you now feel everything.
Yes.
And you're like, what now?
Yeah.
And now there's this new career with no comfort of knowledge to fall back on. Does that make sense? Like going and being another chief somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's not a problem. It's different faces. Culture's going to be a little different.
Same basic job.
Procedures might be a little different, but if it's a contemporary agency, everything's going to look familiar, right? Everything will be familiar. This is so foreign from that. And like my hardest thing for me and my biggest advice would be like it has to be out of your system. Does that make sense? Like if you love and are passionate about law enforcement and the mission set that is associated with that, you have to be willing to walk away from that completely because the lights just shut off. And that is not what you're going to be associated with because you're in the club, right? It's just the same when you're a city manager. I don't imagine it's much different, right? You're in the club and now you're a retiree. Like you're a has-been, I
don't know. I don't think it's quite the same with city management because I do see a lot of people that have been lifetime city managers that are still deeply contributing to city management. And there's some of that in law enforcement, but that transition is wildly different because while there is trauma being a city manager for 30 years, it's not the same as being a police chief.
No.
Let me ask you this. Is there, when you start making that transition, is there kind of a loss of identity that happens?
Absolutely.
Like, this is who I am.
Absolutely.
And you got to kind of go discover who you are without the armor of knowledge and 30 years of experience. And you're just jumping in to a whole new realm with it. That's an interesting exercise. Okay.
It's trying to figure out what does this look like on me?
Yeah.
Right. And who am I supposed to be now?
You're now 3.5 years into that transition. Is that right?
I'm still working through it. Yeah. I'm more comfortable because you go into meetings and you don't understand one acronym that just got said, which is foreign, right?
Are you okay being the one in the room to go, hey, I don't know what that means?
No.
Yeah.
No.
This is and we talk about.
I'm the one that's Googling what that acronym was in the middle of the meeting. Absolutely. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
That's what we talk about, the vulnerability of leadership. Like for a leader to say, I'm a human being, I've never done this job before. I have no idea what you're talking about right
Not
now.
in the meeting. I would go afterwards and find Nick or Laura and be like, hey, what is that? Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah. Listen, we're going to know we're winning when in the middle of the meeting, you just flat out in front of everybody, hey, I don't know.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Now I know what they're talking about at least. I don't fully understand all of it. This gets better by the year.
That's funny. It sounds like you've made a lot of progress in the last few years just with that transition. But as you think back through your career, because 30 years in law enforcement is a long time, as you think back through that, what were the things you really had to overcome internally to become a better leader, to go from frontline officer to chief, and the evolution that requires?
Yeah, I think for me, it's vision inspired. Mm-hmm. Like I would encourage any organization that doesn't have vision, mission, values for me. Like I could not lead without that.
Yeah. It's a foundation,
I just could
isn't
not.
it?
It sets an azimuth that is impartial to any one person.
Yeah.
And it becomes a conversation piece when things aren't going well or right of where we're supposed to be and how to right the ship. Whether it's corrective behavior, whatever it is, it's the easiest way to impersonalize everything because this is the standard. This is the mission. This is the vision. This is how we all agreed to do it. And we're all, including the chief, we're all going to be accountable to that.
Yeah.
So and you get that brainwashed into you like in the Marine Corps.
Yes.
So it's easy to take that with you, but not every organization works that way.
They don't work that way. And I think even the ones that try don't always do it well because it's one thing to develop those things. But often what happens is they end up being banners and posters on a wall, but there's no accountability. We're not talking about this on a regular basis going, hey, we value empathy. And boy, that meeting you just ran, boy, there was zero empathy there. So talk to me. What's going on? They don't do that very well. And as a result, then it just becomes a thing on a wall or on a website that nobody ever references.
Your culture, that's supposed to drive your culture, right? And your culture is nothing more than your behavior.
Yeah.
You can fool yourself and say your culture is this and that, and you have fancy pictures and all the things that are associated with culture. And we've done all this training.
Yeah.
And no, if it's not part of a daily conversation, reinforcing the behaviors that make whatever words you put on that paper true, then it's not your culture.
So where did you have this revelation? Were you this way when you were a frontline officer first getting started in law enforcement? Obviously, you got some of that from the Marines. Coming out in law enforcement, were you, hey, what's our values? Like, did you value those kind of things?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, in my prior organization, I helped drive those things, creating those things.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of my persona is I do like the vision stuff.
Yeah.
I do like, where are we going to be in 10 years if nobody gets in our way and we have unimpeded resources? Like what is our potential? And I want to rally everybody up and let's go. You know what I mean? Let's get to our potential.
Yeah.
Because when you're around people like that, and that's why I'm that way, because I've been around people like that and it's inspiring. And if it's worth doing, why would you not want to work for a great place?
Yeah.
Like everybody. Like I've been in toxic environments where everybody wants to complain and hates coming here. Like that's insanity. Like we spend more time of our waking hours at work. Like it should be meaningful.
Yeah.
Like our unofficial, I challenged the city manager when I first got over there because we have values, but we didn't have a vision statement. And I'm like, just out of curiosity, what would your vision statement be? And it took me a year to get an answer out of him. And it was brilliant. It's Georgetown, a worthy investment. Like Georgetown, ... a worthy investment. Now think about that.
Yeah.
Like I could make people cry.
You could write a book about that, right?
Does that make sense? Like as a director for my 6, our job is to create such an environment that it is worthy of our people's time to invest here to make this city a great place to be. And it translates to the citizenry, like making it a great place to be for people like me 15 years ago that uprooted a family and brought 3 kids to Georgetown, Texas, because that's where I want to raise them. And the experience those 3 kids had is they loved Georgetown. Like I have one who's gone now in the Navy and he wants to come back and live here and raise his family here. Like that's crazy. Like that doesn't happen in every city in the United States. Like that takes something special going on.
Yeah.
But that is like a simple statement like that can move people. And like, that's what I'm passionate about. That's why I wanted to go to the ACM role, because I know the technical side, as David would say, inch deep, mile wide. Like, that's my job. My job isn't to be the subject matter expert. I'm an inch deep, a mile wide.
This is the second or third time we've heard that phrase today.
Yeah. Is it?
Yes.
Is it coming? Was he cited?
No, but it was ACM's. Like, I think that ACM role is that, right?
It is. Occasionally you got to get 6 inches deep.
Yeah.
Because that's your job to protect city manager and make sure we're addressing things through the lens of council and a higher level. But yeah, it's interesting.
When we think about development, you talked about younger you being opinionated and angry. As you start to get in those leadership roles, you start to learn there are times opinionated is helpful. There's times it's not. There's times anger is helpful. There's a lot of times it's not. How did you learn to temper that? Or how did you learn to, some of it's age tempers that, right?
Yeah, it's maturity.
Okay.
I go back to the word authentic, right? You can do that in a toxic way. And you can do that in a way where you'll upset people, but they'll still love you and respect and appreciate you because you're real.
Yeah.
And it's not personal, and it's not like, I'm driven by results.
Okay.
Right. And in the early years, it was more results and less people. And like my advice now, my counsel now, like my role as a senior leader now, having grown through lots of bad examples, is we have to be intentional leaders. Like leadership has to be intentional. Like I love John Maxwell, has been one of my favorite authors because he just writes simply. And I like that. I don't have to read the pages 5 times to understand what somebody's
I'm with you on that one.
Right? It's simple and it resonates with me.
Yeah.
But he says leadership is influence. Like nothing more, nothing less. I love that. But like what I would add to that is we have to be considerate about the impact, because you can lead through act or omission. But if you are not laser focused on the impact, the end state of what that leadership is doing or not doing, you are missing the mark.
Yeah.
And then you are behind the power curve. Like you have lag measures.
Yep.
Does that make sense? You're not being proactive.
Oh yeah.
And if you're thoughtful as a leader, being intentional about the impact you're having on others, it would take me back to all the days when I was opinionated and I was like from the heart coming from the right place to make the organization better and get to a better end state.
Yeah.
But man, at the end of the day, nobody cares. When I reflect back on my chiefdom, nobody's going to care about the building that we built. Nobody's going to care about the programs and the training volume that we do. And the impact that nobody's going to care about any of that. The next chief is going to come in and change all of it anyway. You know what I mean? All you're going to be remembered for is how you made people feel.
Yeah.
How you inspired people to move the needle on their own potential.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite quotes, and I put it on my challenge coin as a chief, and I hate to admit it came from the Army Infantry Journal in like, I don't know, 1950s.
The Army might know a thing or two.
And I had to put it on there because it was just, it was given to me in the Marine Corps as a young NCO, and I kept it all those years. And I put it on my coin, and it says, "No man is a leader until his appointment is ratified in the minds and hearts of his men." And it's meant for all people, not gender specific. But like you capture the essence of that. It's when people will work for fear of disappointing you, rather than for fear of what you will do to them for not doing their job.
Yeah.
Like now you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Well, you talk about the idea of, the anger sometimes is super helpful, sometimes it's not, and being people focused versus just results. And I think when it's results focused, that's the natural state for most of us, because we're driven by, you get things done, you're successful, now you have value, now you can feel good about yourself. And ultimately what happens is when we go down that road, we get so focused on what we're getting done, we don't stop and contemplate, okay, how am I doing this? Yes, my people are checking the box, but they're going home every day stressed out and they hate me and they're scared of me all the time. Like, is that a win? And most leaders go, no, that's not a win. but they don't understand the intentionality that every conversation shapes that. Every word, every action, every inaction, like
Every
you said,
interaction.
everything does. And so I think to me, that's the sacred nature of leadership, is how we show up is how our people go home. So if we show up in a bad place, they're going to go home in a bad place. And now we have impacted their families because we weren't doing the work to be intentional. We weren't slowing down. And to me, that's everything. That's why we do everything we do. And I think there's something on that journey. Learning to navigate that is really hard. I've done a ton of damage as a leader in my life. Yeah. And it takes a lot of humility to eventually go, man, I have screwed so much up. But that's the path to then doing it well. Yeah. That's interesting, man. It really is. I think there's something to leadership. It is. I was listening to a thing the other day. He was talking about how if you are a person who knows everything about where you're going and what you're doing, you're not actually leading. You're just managing. So much of leadership is, I don't know. Here's the future. We're creating it. I have no idea how we're going to get there. Let's go figure it out.
And people will work so hard for their own ideas as opposed to yours.
Yeah.
And I was very intentional when I came as a police chief to clean a bunch of that up, because you get a clean slate, you get a fresh start. Mm-hmm. And I'd learned all those lessons by the time I was an A chief.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's no one else now but you. Mm-hmm. Like there is no one to blame.
Yeah.
Like you own absolutely everything. Right. And there was so much to do. And it was like, I reflect back now, even having learned some of those lessons, moments where I dug in and I would convince you or come close to, yeah, it was the right thing to do. And it's not like, what I've learned is it's not always what you do, it's how you do it. Mm-hmm. Like you can terminate somebody and they thank you and shake your hand and they walk off. We have officers, and I was one more times than not that people would thank you for writing a citation just because you treated them with respect.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like now the joy is helping other directors work that way.
Yeah.
And like we've done so much work in our organization with Arbinger, which was life-changing for me.
Yep.
You know, we've done work with you, like you, man, the way you framed showing up healthy, you know, and in other versions of the like similar situated material, it's like when you're overextended or you're stressed.
Yeah.
But when you made that connection for me of what you show up like when you're unhealthy, just resonated, man. It was like soul crushing. Absolutely soul crushing.
Can you please write that review for us so that I can put that on our website?
Somebody call me, like it makes me emotional, man, thinking back. And I'll tell one quick story. Like working with Arbinger, I was in such a like bad place with my son. And it goes back to intentional leadership, why I'm so passionate. Like I talk for 2 hours about intentional leadership, because if you don't realize what you're doing with other people, you're not leading. Like you're being selfish and you're being prideful.
Yeah.
And my son was struggling, and he's about 15, and lots of drama at school, like he's dyslexic, but incredibly intelligent. Like could walk in the garage, take everything apart, like make something brand new with it all and plug it in and it will work. It's crazy. Like he was doing that since he was like 7 or 8. But can't sit still in a classroom.
Yeah.
You know, always in trouble. And a lot of the teachers aren't equipped to deal with it. We want kids to sit down and be nice and do what they're supposed to do and be obedient. Like everybody wants that. And you have some boys that just want to be boys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I've said he's Delta Force or prison since he was little. Like right out of the gate, like he had that.
I've got one of those sons. We've always said he's either going to take over the world or burn the whole place to the ground.
Prison is what I said. And it's so funny. And I found the Arbinger material, which is just has to do with your mindset.
Yeah.
Like mindset drives behavior.
It's everything.
And you're either inward, selfish about what you're doing, using people as vehicles, or they're obstacles to your work. You don't see them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? You don't see them as human beings. And as an officer, that resonates, man, because when you call me to show up because you have a problem, that's the problem, right? He's the problem that you're telling me about, and I'm working for you. So if I'm walking into that with that mindset, how do you think I'm going to treat that human being as the problem?
Yeah.
And that human being feels that. Like we feel that.
You're the task I need to check.
Skeptical or cynical towards us, right?
Yeah.
But that, like, you don't just get to turn that on when you're at work, right? That material had so much. It resonated so harshly with me. This was like a God moment. Like I got the godly baseball bat is what I got. And you reflect back on like,
Yeah.
and I wasn't a tyrant. Does that make sense? Like
Right.
I wanted to drive the train to do better. So we're all proud of the work we're doing and where we're at.
Yeah.
But I was ignorant to the expense that can cost him relationships.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And I think the reality is none of us were ever taught this. We weren't taught that how we show up. We were just taught get the things done. And I think when you're talking about parenting, man, I had a relationship like that with my oldest son where it was a struggle. There was a lot of things going on at school. He was struggling in so many ways, and he went to the Navy. And so is that where your son is?
He's actually he got hurt at Buds. He's trying to be a Navy SEAL.
Oh, wow.
So he just had surgery, and he's going to have one more surgery and then go back and try to do it.
Give it another shot. Man, that's awesome.
The story's still being written.
But it's one of those things that I look at how I parented him, and I was not a good leader. I was inward focused. You're going through something and you're creating problems for me versus how can I help you learn to navigate life? Like I was looking at him like an adult, and he's a kid whose brain hasn't even formed yet. And I did so much damage doing that. Now, thankfully, there's a lot of grace in parenting, and I did some things right. They always know that I love them no matter what. So when I do things badly, I'm quick to apologize, and we have a great relationship now. But boy, there were a lot of years I didn't know if it was going to happen.
I almost broke my child.
Yeah.
And as a parent, I'd convince you I was doing it right. Like, he's not doing his homework. Yeah. He's not doing this. He's disrespectful. Yes. He doesn't listen. So what do? What any good, respectable parent would do, right? Yeah. I start to micromanage his life.
Yes.
Right? So I don't listen. I talk over him. I instruct him. I don't ask. And you look at that, and when you're on his end, when you receive a parent that is overbearing, doesn't listen, doesn't care what you have to say, right? Now, I'd convince you he earned that because he's not doing what he's supposed to do.
Yes.
What you said it crushes me because it was more about me than it was my son.
Yeah.
It was more about how his behavior reflects upon me and all the hard work that I've done to give him a good name, right, in our community as a police chief. And you're destroying that. Yeah. Like, you're making me look bad. Yeah. That's why you hear parents yell at Little League games. Yeah. Like, you're making me look bad.
Yeah.
And man, learning that lesson, had nothing to do with work, but it is the most powerful leadership lesson I've ever learned. And it almost cost my son his life.
Yeah.
Like, it was so bad I can't even tell you. And I went to the Arbinger Institute. And when I went through their curriculum, I had a guy in there who they talk about collusions, right? Which is an odd name for conflict because collusions is nothing more than two people collaborating to be in a fight.
Yeah.
Which is true. Like, anybody who's married or has friends, somebody pushes your button. Oh, you want to push my button? Okay, let's talk about that. I'll push your button. I'll jump on your button.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what was going on. And there's a facilitator from this other company who's there with two new facilitators, like deeply rooted in the culture of their company. And I'm not getting it. Like, we're mapping out this collusion I have with Jake, my son.
Yeah.
And like, I don't get it. I'm like, I understand the concept, but I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. And he's just smiling at me. He's like, poor soul. He's like, he goes, man, come see me on a break. And he takes me out in the lobby. We're in this hotel and we sit down. He goes, forget about all this. Tell me about your son. You love your son? I'm like, of course I love my son. He goes, man, just tell me about your son. And I start telling him about Jake. He's dyslexic and he's the smartest kid ever. And like, he can take stuff apart. And like, whenever I'm doing work like that, he's always there, like, to do stuff. Like, one time he stuffed a toy in the toilet just so I'd have to take it off the floor to find it. You know what I mean? And he's standing there as like a tiny kid. And he's like, yeah, I bet it's a stick, Dad. I'm like, what do you mean you bet it's a stick, Dad? And it dawned on me.
He's like, well, it was a stick 30 minutes ago when I flushed
punched it through the bag, and sure enough, this giant piece of stick comes out. And he's like, I told you, and walks away. Like, he just always wanted to be around.
Yeah.
And as he got older, he wanted to take like a pad out and draw plans to build something and do this and do that. And I'm like, dude, go do your homework. Go clean your room. Like, let's do this, let's do that, let's do the productive things that in my mind make you like a noble young man who's on his way to doing something great.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And all I did was shut him down. And by the time he was 15, Like he was broken.
Yeah.
Like I literally broke my kid.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it till I'm talking to this guy on a break and I'm telling him how much I love my kid and all these things. And the more I'm talking about the true Jake, not the collusion Jake of what he does, but how now what he tricked me into doing, which was brilliant, is seeing my actual son, not the behavior that makes me upset as a dad. You know, and it was crushing, man. I was crying.
Listen,
he was crying, and I got it, and I flew Jake out that Friday. To go to we're going to go to the Grand Canyon and hike rim to rim. We hadn't talked in like 18 months. But we had done Spartan races and like, we'll go do the tough things because he's just a tough kid. And he gets there. We have a 7-hour drive to the Grand Canyon. And I pull out the book that has the map of our collusion and I give it to him and I start walking him through it. This is what I see when you do this. This is what I see. This is what I do. This is probably how you see me. And he's like, yeah, no kidding. He's like, this is what he says. He goes, you have to come to Utah to figure that out.
and pay a lot of money to do it?
I just start laughing. So I start just asking him questions because before we left, his mom's like, hey, he's got a Jeep. He wants to tear it apart and put like a couch in the back and it's flat screen TV. Like, this is Jake.
That's fascinating.
He would draw a diagram on how to do it. And I'm like, Mom told me what you want to do with the Jeep. And it was like, what I saw in my son in that moment is like when you see a dog that's been beaten and you go to pet it and it just
recoils.
Retracts. It doesn't. And I'm like, I've like broke my son. Like, I'm going to ask him about this because normally I'd be like, that's the dumbest idea ever. Like, are you crazy? Like, we can't do that to a car. And I'm like, no, man, like whatever you want to do with that, I'll write the check as soon as we get back. We just have to be able to restore it back to its factory condition, right? So tell me about it. And long story short, I finally just shut up and started asking that kid questions and letting him talk. And it was slow at first, but man, Chad, for 7 hours, that kid did not stop talking. He did not. Until this day, just that one interaction of me like shutting up and seeing my kid, like our relationship has been 180 degrees. Like 180 degrees. And that leadership lesson alone made me such a better leader in every aspect of what I do. Because if you can't figure it out with the people you love most, you're damn sure not going to do it at work.
Well, one of the things you said was, it's not a business thing, but the reality is I think everything in leadership comes back to marriage and parenting. And if we cannot be good parents, we're going to struggle to lead at work because we are essentially parenting our people. And you're not alone in the feeling that you have broken your kids. Because I look at all three of my sons and all three are doing really well and I'm so proud of them. And yet I look at each one and I see very specific ways I broke them because I was still growing up and I was immature and I was chasing, here's what success is. This is what I've been told. This is what I've been taught. This is what society tells us. I didn't create as much space as I should have for each of them to just be them. And so that's now,
because you care about them.
It is. And I think the fear is, and this is what I came to, is all this is so fear driven. We're afraid that if we do this or don't do this, X is going to happen. And that fear, we don't talk about that fear. And as a result, then we're not talking about the real problem. And I'm a big believer in leaders, especially on teams. Boy, we got to be able to slide our fear onto the table and say, hey, I'm afraid of this right now. We got to go have a hard conversation with somebody. Hey, I'm going to say this and I'm so afraid you're going to take it like this, but this is not what I mean. I promise you. This is what I want you to hear. Just that little preamble allows you to set this stage to really have a conversation about what you need to talk about.
Right. And makes it safe to have the right conversation.
It does. And with so many of our kids, the actions we take and the conversations we have are so fear-driven, and we're afraid to show that fear and say, hey, here's what I'm afraid of. But I think about even my sons, the times that we truly connected was when I was vulnerable enough to say, hey, I'm really scared right now that if we keep going down this road, this is going to happen. And I don't know how we're going to handle that. And that ability for them to see that I'm human, I think matters because I think I looked at my parents. My parents did so much right, but one of the things I think they could have done better is for me to see the human side. Like I thought they were just perfect. Like they just knew how to do things. And yet then I became a parent. I'm like, I'm garbage at this. But that ability to say, I have no idea what I'm doing, I think it matters for our kids. I think it matters for our teams. That ability to be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm afraid right now, because I guarantee you they're afraid.
Yeah. You have to give them space to follow what they're passionate about.
Yeah.
And it's the same at work.
Yes.
Like every employee has things they love to do, want to do a different way.
Yeah.
And again, they will work harder for their own ideas in their own ways than for you. Like if you ever work for a supervisor that makes you do it their way because it's the right way. It's like, that's crazy. Like for law enforcement, you go to one field training officer and they teach you how to do something. And then you go in your second phase and they're like, why are you doing it that way? Do it this way. And they're like, well, I was just told to do it that way by don't do what he does. That's crazy. And you get to the third one.
Yes.
And you do it all over again, and then you get cut loose on your own, and you do it your own way to begin.
Dude, we could do a whole podcast on my thoughts about field training.
Yes.
Man, the FTO programs in most places is broken.
Same with kids. Give them space to figure it out.
Yes, let them figure it out. Let them try things. Let them understand that this world is about experimentation and learning, and that's how we do it.
It's about teaching them how to solve problems.
So you've got one son in the Navy, and you obviously have a heart for service. That's a lot of what drives you. As you're raising kids and raising up people to be servants, what would you tell people thinking about going into public service, whether it's law enforcement or city management? What would you want them to hear about that experience?
It is, man, I would never in a million years, despite like all the bad I've seen, ever do anything else.
Yeah.
Ever. Wouldn't change a thing. None of it.
What is it that makes it worth it?
It's just, you get a front row seat in life that no one will ever see. No one.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's good, bad. Like it's, I don't know how to explain it, but if you're a good person, consider the work, because we need good people to do a very difficult job.
Yeah.
And like, you're not meeting people at their best. Like you're getting called to meet people at their worst day.
Mm-hmm.
Like when grandma turns 90, nobody calls us to show up and celebrate. Like you get called because creepy Uncle Joe did something crazy with a niece.
Yeah.
And now we have a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's when we get called.
Yeah.
But you have to have just good-hearted people. Like that's what I miss like most about being chief, is just all the daily interaction of all the good work that goes on that you don't always hear about.
Yeah.
You know, the people that are struggling, and officers pooled their own money and bought groceries or a hotel room because it was cold, or bought somebody a jacket or whatever. Happens all the time. All the time. It's not what you see in the news, but I'm telling you, it happens all the time.
Yep. It's funny because, we're in an area where law enforcement is still pretty supported and celebrated. And every time I go on a ride along, I'm fully prepared to buy dinner for whoever I'm riding out with. I've never once had to, and I've been on hundreds of ride-alongs because ultimately there's somebody buying it for us, right? Because there is still a lot of heart for law enforcement out there. And you're right, if you watch the news, you don't see that. Yeah. But it exists because y'all are servants and you are having an impact. One of the things you said there, and it's the thing I've heard a million times and I've witnessed a lot, is you were there on people's worst days. Yeah. And I think there's a correlation there too. If they're at their worst day, can we show up at our best? Because our best, if we go back to those health levels, right? Our best, we are capable of pulling them up out of that. And we can't solve everything for them, but we can be that support for them that they need in that moment. But if we're not at our best, what are we pulling them up out of? Like, we're more likely to fall down in with them. And I think that's where a lot of this goes wrong, is if they're just mired in darkness in one of the really hard times, we get sucked down into that darkness if we're not healthy. And I think that's where it starts to go wrong.
And that's hard for officers because you come into this profession you come in curious.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because you're ignorant. You don't know any better. You come in curious and you want to change the world. And then we introduce you generally to the less than fraction of 1% of the population that doesn't want to follow the rules.
Yeah.
And pretty soon those are your only interactions. And you go from being curious to skeptical because we do get lied to and
absolutely,
right? We do get avoided. And you go from being curious to skeptical to cynical if you're not careful, which is why what you bring to the table with health is so relevant, like to get officers to understand the impact that when you don't show up right, or it's not what you do, it's how you do it. When you don't see the person in front of you as a human being, but we don't spend time talking about that, right? And as a chief, like I spent a lot of time talking about that.
It was funny. You said they go down that cycle if they're not careful. I've never met a cop who's not cynical. And so I don't even know if we can be careful enough to fix that.
Yeah, but that goes back to being intentional.
Yes, that's what I want to get to.
I pull you over, like 3 traffic stops. Yeah. The first one is I ask you for your driver's license, like, Officer Nero, how you doing, sir? Can I see your driver's license, proof of insurance? Reason for the stop is speeding, 65 to 35. Is there any emergency? No, thank you. Can I please have your driver's license? Oh, I forgot it. Oh, no problem. What's your name? Chad Wright. Oh, Chad, what's your date of birth? I'll be right back. And I go back, and what do you think I find in the computer? Nothing, Chad, right? Because you have warrants out. You have warrants out, and you don't want to tell me. So I go back and ask you again. And
this is a hypothetical scenario.
Yeah, and you're like, wait, what date of birth did I give you the first time? And you're like, January 15th, 1972. And you're like, oh, 72. No, it's 71. And the FTO standing on the sidewalk going, oh my God. And you go back and you run it again and there's nothing. And after the third time, the FTO comes over and pushes you out of the way, like me, and is like, listen, you're going to give me your real name right now, or I'm going to charge you with everything I possibly can by law. And you're like, my name's George Stevenson. And you're like, what just happened? Like, I just got lied to.
Yeah.
Right? I was so curious, thinking you were 100% honest. And now the second traffic stop, we stopped someone else and asked the same questions. And that driver's like, I forgot my driver's license, officer. And you're like, yeah, okay. Hey, Jim, like, we got another one, right? Okay, sure. I'm sure your name's John Smith, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have any warrants. And how, like, by the third one, it's, I don't have my driver's license today, officer. Yeah, I need you to step out of the car and get on the sidewalk.
Yeah. And it turns out some of them genuinely forgot their license, right?
Yes. Like, you feel that as a citizen.
How do we, and I don't think we're going to have an answer for this, but I want to ask this anyway. How do we safely help them hold on to their curiosity? Because what happens is if I walk into a situation just like you're talking about, and I already know the answer, I already know the story. Yeah. I've interacted with this guy before.
It's all the same.
I know he's an asshole. I know this is going to go bad. I'm walking in a way looking for it to go bad. I'm showing up in a way that is probably going to influence it going bad, if not cause it, versus the curiosity to go, hey, I've had some rough interactions with him. I wonder if we could have a good one. I wonder if there is better possible for this human being.
1,000%.
So can we train people to maintain curiosity?
Yes.
Okay.
100%. And it's not, it's not so much as, listen, I can be cynical, right? I can pull you, I can stop you. And as soon as you say, I don't have my driver's license, in the back of my mind, this is what emotional intelligence is, right? The emotion of, oh, you're lying. And the cynicism starts to brew.
Yeah.
I can recognize that without even a facial expression.
Yeah.
Like, I know based on experience, 8 out of 10 times, depending on where and what, like there might be something afoot. Does that make sense? Just based on experience. Doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah.
So if I treat you as if that is going to be true, you're going to feel that. And that's our problem in law enforcement.
Yeah.
Right? It's not what we're doing. It's how we're doing it. We're not self-aware enough and we're not emotionally intelligent enough to not let you know that's what we're thinking. I can be 100% professional, gracious, and be thinking the entire time, he probably has warrants.
Yeah.
And never lets you onto that based on experience and treat you perfectly professional, right? I can be tactful and tactical at the same time. It's not an officer safety issue. It's you not being an a-hole issue.
Is it a middle ground where you are open to the fact that they might have warrants out, and we're going to check for that? We're also open to the fact that they might not be. It's kind of withholding that judgment to say, okay, if I judge and I'm judging this as bad, I have to respond as if it's bad. But I'm not judging. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to hold open possibility for both.
Even if it's bad, even if there's warrants, we can be professional and have to take you to jail.
Yeah.
Like,
that's interesting.
And get thanked when we're done.
Like, this is how much progress are y'all making in terms of that training becoming the norm? And
I can't speak for on a national level, but I can tell you in Georgetown, we've done a ton of that training.
Yeah.
A ton.
And do y'all see the fruits of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I like that.
And you see, it's like, make good videos. Like, that's go out and make good videos.
Yeah.
Like, treat people with respect, see people, treat the people you see like they're not the problem. They have a problem. They were speeding. Chad, you were speeding. You had a problem, right? You're not the problem, but your behavior is. Does that make sense? There's a difference. There's a disconnect there. It's the same with our kids, right? When we treat our kids that way because they did something we don't like, and we treat them as the problem instead of loving our kid but holding them accountable for what they did. Like we can do that.
When it's professional, it is, hey, you're fine. We just got to deal with this one thing over here. Right. And it changes things. It was fun. And I think it changes things from the citizen's perspective too, because I got pulled over the other day in Oregon. First time I've been pulled over in like 20 years. And I think I've spent so much time with cops. What was really funny is when he flashed his lights at me, my heart didn't skip at all. Like it didn't go up even a little bit. I was like, all right, we're getting pulled over. And I know how this is going to go because we got pulled over. And he's like, reason you're going 20 miles over the speed limit? I was like, no, I was just trying to earn a ticket. So I understand. Feel free to give it to me. I earned it. And he's like, well, let me run your license. We'll get you out of here. So he ran the license. Everything was good. But we had a great conversation right there on the side of the highway about his department and how they're doing and what their stress level's like. It turned into this interesting coaching moment and gave him a challenge coin at the end. I'm like, okay, you've already said you're letting me off. I'm not giving you this as a bribe, just so we're clear. But it was the best interaction because, again, I wasn't looking for a fight or a confrontation. He wasn't looking for it. It went incredibly well. And I think that kind of thing happens when the officer showing up is just, they're at that healthy level, right? They are not looking for that fight. They're looking to figure out what's going on, help somebody out, and go on from there. And it was just interesting.
Self-aware and like training expectations.
Yeah.
Like it has to start with leadership. Yeah.
It's everything.
And it has to be reinforced.
Yep.
Constantly.
It is a nonstop journey. And is part of what I love about it is as much as I spend my life helping people learn how to be better leaders, boy, my journey is nonstop. I'm learning new things every day. I eat this up.
It's never going to end.
And I kind of like that. I like the idea that 10 years from now, that version of me is going to look back and be like, what an idiot. Like that guy had no idea. And that just excites me that possibility is out there. A lot of why we're having these conversations is we are trying to help create systems and organizations where people can thrive, where they can genuinely do their best work, connect with their purpose. And I think there's a lot of things, whether it's in city management or even in policing, we've got to rethink that the system itself is not built for thriving. What are things we need to rethink in order to help our people thrive well into the future?
I would give you a framework.
Okay.
That I had the components as a chief, but I did not have it in a manner in which to articulate until I got to be an ACM and was working with another ACM, Wayne Reed, who was down in Cibolo. But when he started our performance management program, he had this model of vision. I'll give you mine because I don't remember his, but I changed his.
It's better now.
So yeah, it didn't make sense to me the way he did it, but it made sense to him. So we agreed to disagree.
Yes.
Vision inspired. Like you have to have a destination that we're all working towards.
Yep.
Vision inspired, mission driven, like what we do, how we do it. People focused, performance based. If you can hit those four things as your focus, hard focus as a leader, everything else falls into place.
Yeah.
I mean, if you pick 3 things to work on in each one of those 4 things to communicate the vision constantly, mission driven, right? So people understand their purpose, their why.
And how they contribute to it.
It's their why.
Yep.
You answer that question, people will work towards their potential for you. People focused. Often we forget about our people. Like I made those mistakes early in my career, but not as a monster. Like even in the Marine Corps, you got taken care of. I mean, they fed you and let you sleep. That's all you needed. Right?
Yeah.
But it's like training.
Yeah.
Like it's all the things that like when a budget, like we have to make cuts because things are tight. What are the first things we cut?
Yeah. Training.
Anything surrounding our people.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's what's always been done.
Yep.
But yet those are the very human components that make everything work.
I'm seeing a correlation here in the business world. What happens is the second things get tough, the marketing budget is the first thing that gets cut. And yet that is the fuel for future sales, which is the fuel for profits and the business's sustainability. I think it's the same thing in this. We're not cutting marketing. We're cutting people-focused things. We're going to go to less conferences. We're going to do less training. We're going to invest in our people less. The Christmas party gets smaller, right? Those things tighten up. And it doesn't mean there doesn't need to be those tightenings sometimes.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
But
I use that as a subtle example.
But that can't be the first place we look.
A lot of organizations that don't do a lot of training anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge component of training because I can tell you, as sure as I'm sitting here, the transformation of the police department under my tenure as a police chief was attributed to training.
Yeah. I you know what, and you look at the city of Georgetown in general, you and I were talking before the cameras turned on. I love working with y'all so much because every time I'm there, I don't have to convince anybody that this is a good idea. Y'all do so much leadership training and development that everybody's like, yeah, give me more. Rarely do we do an organization, we do some work and they're like, give us everything you have because we want all of it. And that is, y'all are really locked into that.
And we're very careful about what.
Yeah.
If it doesn't fit in to the framework and doesn't support the framework, we don't do it. Nothing is worse than the Book of the Month Club. Right? Your boss goes to a conference, comes back, forget all that stuff we just got done doing. We're doing this now.
Yeah.
And then he comes back 2 weeks later and you're doing something different.
Yeah.
We've been very thoughtful in what we're doing and why we're doing it and how it all fits in. Yeah. And we try to keep that part of the conversation.
Yeah. It goes back to the intentionality, which I think is one of the themes of this episode.
And we have such a good director group. Like teams ebb and flow. We have such a good council, such a good director group. And we think about the problems that we do have. And then you go to a conference or you talk to some friends and you're like, oh man, like the problems we have are like, those are great problems to have.
Yes. We will take those all day versus what other people are dealing with. Yeah. I could definitely see that.
The training and the conversations that just supports your culture.
Yeah.
It's you play the long game. There is no quick fix. There is no, like, we run everybody through a 4-hour training on culture. It becomes who you are, and it has to be part of the conversation every day. And it has to be reinforced when the mark is not hit.
Yeah. You're never done.
No.
Ever.
Yeah.
I love this, man. Wayne, this has been a phenomenal conversation.
It's been awesome.
Thank you for doing this.
We need to hang out and talk about boys.
We should. And honestly, I think that section of this interview probably makes this one of the most valuable interviews we've ever done, which you and I didn't sit down planning to talk about being fathers, but it matters. It is, isn't it?
It makes you want to be better human.
It does. Well, we're in this together, man. Thank you for doing this.
I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us for Leading Thriving Cities. You might also like our other podcast, The Leader Lab. You can find it on all the major podcast platforms and on YouTube. Just search for The Leader Lab. Each episode is under 10 minutes. It's just a quick thought to help you level up your leadership. You'll also find all the other leadership content we are putting out on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Just search for @ForwardPartner.